Hey guys, what's up? RE100 here. And this week we are going to cover Ghidra 101, which is another disassembler. As you know, in the previous videos of Reverse Engineering 101, I covered IDA Pro and IDA Free version. So in this one, we're going to get into Ghidra, which kind of functionalities we can use in our reverse engineering journey. It's going to be another very beginner video. So if you're already familiar with Jira, probably this video is not for you. It's for absolute beginners that never used Jira before. While we are figuring out our way in Jira, we're going to cover 5 Linux Crackmes today. They're absolutely so beginner. They're so easy. So if you have no idea about how to solve Crackmes, how to reverse engineer a binary, Linux binary, this is your video. So, like I said, I'm going to cover 5 Crackmes in this video. And this is going to be the last video that I create with very beginner scenarios. I will try to include a bit harder beginner scenarios at least, or more intermediate level. Right. At least we learned about the IDA Pro, IDA Free, Jira for whichever disassembler you're using. For the rest of the videos, it doesn't matter because we already know the introduction of all of these. So even if I'm using a different disassembler for the next videos, you can still use Ghidra while I'm using IDA Pro, for instance. It doesn't matter. So also in the next videos, I'm planning to cover a bit of introduction to assembly because I realized that I didn't give any introduction on assembly, and I love assembly. So of course we will go through that as well. Another good news that I can give is that I started working on a video on heap exploitation because I got this request many times from others. You know me, I'm not like very fancy YouTuber. I'm just trying to share my knowledge. So if the resolution is not good or if the light is not great, if my English accent is not for you, sorry, but just try to focus on the information that I'm providing here because we're a small community. We're trying to teach each other or share with each other, right? Cool. As always, before we jump in, please don't forget to drop a comment if you are requesting to see different topics for the next videos. But pretty much talk about what's the plan for the next videos. Like I mentioned, there will be assembly, there will be different Crackmes, and the reverse engineering journey for more intermediate Crackmes that we can actually read the assembly code rather than just changing one assembly instruction. There will be videos on heap exploitation. There will be different exploitation techniques again. I'm going to include probably in the next few months, we will start having seen some videos in my channel on kernel exploitation, which is something that I'm working on since last year. So just stay tuned. All right, if you are ready, we had already enough chit chat, so let's jump right in. All right, so first of all, we're gonna start by installing Jira. So you can just go to the GitHub page, or you can go to the official page, which will also forward you to the GitHub page later for downloading the installation files. You will just download the latest one. Go back to your terminal, whichever directory you are. It's gonna download a zip file. Unzip with a unzip comment. That should be the comment. Let me show you. This will be the zip file. You will unzip it, which will create this directory. And then this will be our main file, which will run Jira in the background. When you first run it, it will ask you for JDK home directory. So how are we doing that? We're going back to another tab, and I'm saying apt install Open Jdk, then press tab so that it will ask you which version do you want. For instance, let's do it. When I press tab, it will ask you for any version that I want. I'll choose JDK and it will install it. And as you can see in here, that's the main directory, home directory. I'm entering it and it will give me the user interface of Jira. It starts like this. Let's make this small and kill the browser. That should be good. So when you first open Ghidra, it comes with this project directory. Basically, you will just create a new one or open a new project. For the sake of this exercises that we're gonna have, I'm gonna create a new project. And all the binary files that I'm gonna cover are these 5 files that we're gonna go through one by one. And I'm gonna create a new project. It will be a non-share project. I don't have to share it with anyone. I will say next, and the project directory, I can just choose it. It should be under month, the shared folder, session 1, and that should be the project directory. And the project name can be session 1. I do not mind. Say finish, and one by one we can just drag these files to this project, or we can just choose it. For that, I'm just going to go to file system. I'm assuming we are also having more beginner people in this session, so I will try to make it as user friendly as possible. I'll just drag the C1 file under the session project. As you can see, it immediately finds the format ELF, which is a Linux binary. The architecture, you can also see it in here, 64-bit. Its program name is C1. Under this destination folder, I say OK. It will load the language. Let it show us the import results summary. As you can see, it results the file name, compiler, GCC, processor, it's a little endian. There are other information that we can see in here. We'll just say OK, go with the default options. Whether you can drag it down to the code browser to click on it. I will just drag it down to the code browser. It's very similar to the IW basically, and this is what we're gonna get, like the disassembly view, the compiler in here. Anyway, it asked me, since it's not analyzed yet, would you like to analyze it? When I say yes, it will show me all the analyzers in here. In the next ones, we can definitely choose different options. Now, for this one, we'll go with the default. But for instance, you can just download a exe file, Windows executable file on a Linux system, and you can actually run it with a tool called Wine. And if you want to analyze it, you need to choose different kind of analyzers in here in order to make sure that you are choosing the right analyzer. Anyway, this is a very simple Linux exercise, so I will go with the default options. So if you watch my previous videos on IDA Pro and IDA Free version, you're probably familiar with the concept. I will just go through the same mindset. What options do we have in the user interface? As you can see, this is the program tree. We're seeing different part of the code for assembly, like BSS, data sections. There are different sections of the code. Very cool. And there's the symbol tree. There are imports, exports, and the most important, probably the functions. Here, when you click on it, it immediately shows you in the disassemble view. So let's see it a bit. How does it look like in here? Let me open it a bit. So in Jira, as you can see, every single function starts with this comments, and it's specified that it's a function. Sometimes when you are disassembling a binary, it doesn't detect the function properly. So we may need to define in the future, but for the sake of the simple exercise, we're just gonna see that every single function is defined. We're starting here, it goes and on until here, right? And as you can see, there's return function, a return instruction, and there's a new function starting. Let's continue the next one. Ends in here with the return and new function starts. Anyway, let's go back to main again. What else do we have? We have the data types in here. Which other options do we have? Let me see. There are search options in here. You can directly search for strings. What else do we have that I can show? There are window, this is important. There's like a tree and graph views that we will also consider later. As you can see, if you're using scripting, you can also use these options, very similar to IDA. Let me see if there's anything else that I can show in the beginning. Then we can, I guess, start using other options as well. All right, this seems enough at the moment. Try and keep it easy. Please drop a comment if you're finding it way too easy so we can talk about it. Anyway, we clicked on the main function, we ended up in here. So as you can see, there is a decompiler window in here. So when you have that function here, as you can see, it's the main function. First of all, we're gonna go and check online for what's the syntax for a main function for C program. So for instance, there is this example program. If you are curious about the syntax of a main program, so it gets int argc, which is the first parameter, and argc shows how many parameters are there. For instance, let me show you on the example, which is easier. If I say C1, okay, let's change the permissions of all of these first. Clear, now it should be better. They're all executable, nice. So what we're gonna do is that if I can type, for instance, when I run it like this, C1, it asks for a password, right? If I write a password in here, this is the right syntax, and the argc in this condition is 2. One of them is the file name, C1, and the second one is the argument that I'm writing for it. So that's the definition for argc. As you can see here, it is character array argv. In here, argv will be the list of strings. For instance, if I copy this and I should have Sublime here. Let me go back to it. So for instance, if we are writing a program like this and we are just writing user input, right? In a main program, let's copy this like that. Let's see, what does this mean? Argc will be 2. And for the argv, if we are writing it like this, for the 0 element of this string array will be C1, while the argv for the first element will be this user input that we wrote. Okay. So that's like a main understanding of a main program in a C language. So let's go back to our code browser. As you can see, this function is written in a wrong way, right? Sometimes the compiler may write the pseudocode in a wrong way. So what we're going to do is that I'm going to copy this and right click and we'll say edit function signature. So I'm going to change this one. It will stay main. The first parameter will be argc, and the second one will be not long, but it will be char for character. And instead of writing the array structure, I will write it as the followings. So this one is equal as this one. Show you argv. Cool. We defined some things in here. We changed this already. I will say okay. This changed properly now. Now we will try to understand the code in here. What do we see and how we can change these variables to understand the code without going to the assembly code. Basically, in the previous 2 videos, I mostly focused on the assembly code, but in here, I want to focus on more this decompiling the code in here in a meaningful way, in a pseudocode. So let's see. We're having integer var1, there's var2, and in the same way. So one thing I will do is that I will go File, Edit, Tool Options. In here, there should be listing fields, and there should be cursor text highlight, right? As you can see, it automatically comes as the middle click. I will change this to left click to highlight when I'm clicking with left side of the mouse. I will say OK. Now this should be possible. When I click on UR, it shows me every single UR parameter. So it will be easier for us to follow in this way. What does this code look like? If var1 is in also here, there's also another parameter. So let's start with the easy one. As you can see, this is string length function, right? And there is a string. Probably that's our answer. But of course, we'd like to understand what does this code look like. So for this string, it puts it in a function string length and stores it in this variable. So I'm assuming this variable can be renamed as length. I can right click and say rename variable, or the shortcut for it is L. I will just call this length and it will change it in every single occurrence of this variable, as you can see. Now it is a bit easier to read. What else do we have? So return UR2. UR2, whatever this variable is, it will be a result, right? It can be 0, it can be 1. We don't know what this is, or -1 if it's a exit or there's an error in the function. So I'm going to rename this one by pressing on L with result. That looks even better. And let's see what ivar_l is. So the function starts with if argc is equal, continue with all these. Otherwise, say please supply the password. So what did we see when we first when we first press on C1? It says please supply the password. So argc was the number of arguments that we are entering, and if we are entering C1 and the user input, that would be 2. As you can see, we are here entering 1. Then we are immediately skipping this if part and we are going to the else. Please supply the password. By the way, whenever you're clicking on the decompiler and the disassembly view, you're going to see the corresponding assembly code. That's the cool part. Cool. So the result turns negative and we are exiting the code in this way, right? What else do we have in here? So argument number needs to be 2. That's obvious. The length will be the string length of this string that's given in here. Then there's this ivar1 parameter. What is this? It's making string comparison between argument 1, which is the user input that's been entered. If you go back here, what did we say for argument 1? It's the user input you're putting, right? Cool. So it's comparing, making string comparison between the user input that you put and with the strength for the first length character. So if length is 4, it will just compare the first 4 characters. And the length is the same length as this one. So it is checking for the full length of the string that you're entering with the real string that's supposed to match. So if you change this ivar1 as well, this will be user input. Now the whole decompiled code is pretty straightforward. You can also check for the syntax for the string compare if you don't know how I mentioned this with like user input and the other string, first string, second string, and the number of characters to be compared, first number of characters. So it's pretty straightforward now. So if I enter this here, let's copy and go back to my terminal and write the value, without this, of course, it says correct. The password was hackadoo this whole time. You can also save this file, save all to make sure that all the changes that you made will stay as it is. Right, let's kill this one. Don't save. I do not care about saving at the moment, so let's kill the browser as well. And let's go back to the second one. So what am I gonna do? I'm gonna drag the C2 file into my project. It's detected again as ELF 64-bit under the session1 directory. File name is C2. I say okay, it gives me the import result summary, a little endian, GCC, file name, blah blah. I'm saying okay. And of course dragging it to the dragon, let's say. And let's start the code browser. It asks if I want to analyze it. I will say yes. It will automatically detect the analyzers. That's appropriate for this binary. I'm not changing anything. I'm saying analyze. And let's see. Again, this is a C program, and I'm expecting the entry point to be main. I will go there and double click on it. It gave me the function already. Decompile the code, and we will try to change the variable names, try to understand the functions, and try to solve the exercise. Again, as always, we are going to here, clicking on this and saying edit function signature. Remember, the first variable should be argsy. You do not have to write it in this way. I'm just like trying to make sure that it's easier for us to understand. Car, okay, arg, we. That looks good to me. I will say okay. It changed it everywhere. All right, let's see. What do we see in here? Again, we are seeing a variable called string length of the input string that we put. So I can change the svar2 variable as length by changing the variable with pressing L, which is the shortcut. And I will change this length of user input, right? It's the length of my input string, right? Okay. User input, perfect. Now it's a bit easier. So what does it do? If the length of user input is less than 5, if not less than 5, let's say. Okay, let's see. Argsy, if the number of arguments are not 2, it's making this one. Please supply the password. So if you run the C2 binary, it will say please supply the password. So we have to enter something like that. Let me write something like this with 3 characters. It says we never use a password that short. Where does this come from? In here. So if the length of user input is less than 5 characters, it gives me that error message, right? That's cool. UVAR is again the result. If it's 0, it will return with a success. Otherwise, it will return with an error message. I'm changing this as a result to read it easier. So let's see what's happening in here. If the user inputs first character in the array is H and the fourth character is U, then it says correct. Maybe we should pay 2 more attention. So let's go back here. Let me kill that. So let me write A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And it says the fourth character 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the fourth character should be U, it says. And the 0 character, without mentioning, should be H, it says, right? If I change it like this, copy this, and give it to the binary. Okay, it happens if you copy paste from Sublime. It gives correct. Maybe you should pay more attention to more characters. So that was another very easy one. It's all about reading the decompiled code and changing the variable if necessary. Let's kill this one again. The project folder is here already, so I will just upload the C3 one if I can. Perfect. Again, it's detected the formats and the language. Import result summary. I say okay. Just dragging this down to our dragon to start the code browser. It's not analyzed yet. It asks for it. I say yes. I will go with the default analyzers. We start the code. As always, we're going to the functions and we are starting the main function here. Double clicking on it, which starts it on the disassembler in here. Right, the function starts in there. And as you can see, our decompiled code is in here. For the sake of this video, I'm just trying to rename the variables and try to understand the decompiled code, the pseudocode, in order for us to solve the exercises. So as always, the main function is not defined properly. I'm going there, edit function signature, integer argc, number of arguments, and then this would be car, given to the pointer, description here, arg, right? I would say okay, now this looks even better. Again, we have a string length function of the user input, meaning that svar2 will be the length of user input. I've just said length, we know what that means now. When you click on the length, it shows you every single length view variable that's been used. Again, if the argc is not equal to 2, it will say, please provide the secret password. So let's run this and see what kind of output we get. The same one. Very cool. And then the next one we will do is let's provide an output here. Come on now, you should expect better from us, which comes from here, meaning if the length is less than 5. Let me change the UR1 variable again to result to make sure that we are getting 0 in order to return success. In here, it returns error, obviously. Then there is another operation happening. This is more like a let's get into details of a very simple C code kind of video. But yeah, we're using Ghidra and getting familiar with Ghidra while going through that. Cool. So there are some operations happening here. Let's try to identify, because this is the part that's gonna make us solve this problem. So I'm copying this and just writing in my Sublime in order for us to analyze much better. So as you can see, it starts with 0x, meaning that this is a hex variable. So you can just convert it to decimal, which will be 32. You're basically multiplying each part with 16. 16 times 2 is 32. There's nothing to add here. It's 32 in decimal. Okay, if I can type decimal. And that one was hex, right? Cool. So what does this one ask? So argv1 will be our input. Let me change this to input, which will make it much easier to read. So argv1 will be again input. So it asks for the second character of the array or of the string. Let's write a very easy string in here for us to compare. So the second one, which one would it be? 1, 0, 1, 2. So we're asking for the character 3. Minus, okay, it's asking for the third one, which would be the next one, 4th. It's asking for these two characters to be subtracted, and to be equal to 32. Now replace this with something and something, and it should be 32. How can we do this with decimals? So we're going to go to Ascii Table. Perfect. So in Ascii Table, if you go like this, this table should be created in a way that every column has 32 rows. So you can just choose any corresponding two items. For instance, A is 97, capital A is 65. If you subtract 97 and 65, it will give you 32. Or any of these values. Just pick up a row and choose two values between them. So what I'm gonna have is, this will be small a and this will be capital A, and this should give me 32. If it's 32, then it's success. So what I'm gonna do is that this variable will be A, and the next one will be capital A. And let me copy that and go back here, and let me paste that. And it says correct. You figured out. Looks like we have to upgrade our security. Very easy, very straightforward, but something to keep in mind. Let's kill that guy as well. Let's go to the next exercise. C4. Easy Crackmes, right? Adding it in here, it detects the default options here, and I'm gonna drag it to our Dragon to open code browser. Analyze it, please. Go with the default options. This is a C program. I'm going to functions and main in here. Click. It shows and disassembly and also the decompiled code. As always, let's change the main functions. C function, main function C is not like this. Arg C. This will be car. The pointer to string array arg v. That should look better already. There's string length, so svr2 should be length. Length of what? argv1, meaning user input. I changed that one. So let's see, if argc is 2, then this. Otherwise, please provide this a great password. I'm not going to repeat that, it's so obvious. If you're not providing any user input, it's basically giving you this error message. So we are interested in that part. As you can see, it also shows in the disassembly view. So what do we have in here? It takes the input string's length. If the length is less than 10, it says, come on, you should expect better from us, meaning we need to get a code, a password that's not less than 10. Let's also change the UR1 variable, as it's the returning value that has to be the result, 0 or not. That's cool. It's returning negative here, which will give an error. IMC in there, which will give a correct response. So what we're doing, we're again calculating the length of the user input. Then we are having a variable here, local 18. It initiated in here, it's defined in here, sorry, and initiated in here. So I'm assuming this is the this will be the index. So if I click on L and just name this I, it will be the index. As you can see now, the for loop looks much meaningful, right? So the I variable start with 0, and then until I is, if I is less than length, increase or increment I, and what's the situation that gives the wrong password? So hack the -u, which is probably the password, and the index of it starts with 0, obviously start from the beginning, +2, meaning the next 2 character is not equal to the user inputs index. So if that's not equal, it's wrong password. So what I'm looking for is if these two are equal. Let me copy that and go back to my Sublime, kill the previous exercises details, and let's make this equal. Oops. Okay, if this is equal, that means this is success, right? All right, let's see how we're gonna do that. So this is happening. So let's see, hack the use, copy that. The first string of H, the first character of this string is H, and says make it +2. What does this mean? H +2 will be, according to Ascii characters, J. So H, I, J, K, L. It continues like this, like the English alphabet. So if you increment it by 2, it will go to J. So you need to convert every single character with the 2 incremented ASCII value. For C, D, E, then E, K, L, M, A, B, C, D, E, F, A, B, C, Y. After Y, what does it come? The curly parentheses. Oops, only one. After dash, let's see what comes. Dash seems here, slash, and after U, W, right? So that should be the the right password, but let's try it anyway. Correct. All right, so we read the compiled code. We understand what it means. We changed the passwords a bit, and we solved the exercise. Of course, you need to save this, but I will not save it. Is after this video, I will probably not use this again. So, cool. Let me drag the fifth exercise in here. Executable detected. The import result summary. I will just drag it to my dragon. Starts analyzing for decompiling. I will go with the default options, and let's go to the functions, and main function should be the entry point. I went there. Again, it defined a function here, but it looks main function. In C, we are writing the parameters in a different way. Let me write this down. Ascii, this should be Ascii, and this is for the array, and I will say argv. It's gonna with my computer, it's super slow. Good. So we started with that. Let's see. So this is kind of different because, as you can see, we have our functions in here that we need to go and change if needed, right? So there is a ivar0 variable. It looks like index, but let's keep it in mind. UR2, it looks like it's the result. I think we can already update this one to result. That looks good. If the argc is not equal to 2, argc means the amount of arguments you're entering. If argc is not equal to 2, then call the usage function with the user input. So what does this mean? Let's go to this function by double clicking. As you can see, there's a usage function, takes the parameter 1. What was parameter 1? If you go back with this button, the parameter that it's getting is the pointer to argv, the user input, right? If you double click on this again, the parameter 1 should be the user input. So it's taken that, and as you can see, it's printing a sentence, taking that variable param1 and putting it in here in the sentence and printing serial. Let's see it in real time. If I click on C5 like this, it says C5 takes the argv, the only argument that I entered, which is C5. It takes the exact same thing and puts in here with this %s, that's the usage and C program, and then prints that and gives a new line, just like they did in here, right? So it's basically the function that's running if you do not write any argument. Let's go back to the main function. Cool. So where are we? So this is the part that basically gives an error message saying that enter some argument. Then we are getting ivar1. It's having another function in here, check serial, and putting our input string in here. Then obviously ivar1 will return some value. If that returned value is 0, then we are solving the exercise. So we will go to that function check serial, and to make sure that our ivar1 variable will return 0. So let's double click on check serial, and as you can see, there is a function in here. Param1 will be basically user input. For param1, we can just rename it by clicking on L on the keyboard, and I will say user input, right? This is a pointer to it. So there's size T, SVAR1. So what is SVAR1? Immediately since string length, user input here. So SVAR1 should be length. I'm pressing on L again, and I'm changing this variable to length. Very cool. So we are calculating length in here. So if length is this value, which is hex value, the decimal should be 16. If you click on here, you can also see the value. Binary values here, decimal here, octal here, etc. etc. So we're going to use this as 16. You can also go there in your disassembly And you can also say convert, it should be here, right, to decimal. It can also show like that, and it will show in decimal as well. All right, we do not want that anyway. You can also change the value with Control Z. That would be the go back option. All right, then there is local IC. Again, in the for loop, it looks like this is defined in here, then initiated here. That looks like the iterator. I will just change this value to I to read it easier. This is defined in here, initiated here. If the length is equal to string length of user input, sorry, if the I is less than length, then increment it by 2, and this will return the error. So it should be equal instead of not equal. So I will copy that one and we'll try to understand what does this mean. I'll just copy that one. Let's remove the previous solution and write it in here. So instead of not equal, I will write it equal, which will be our success criteria, right? Oops. All right, so what does this mean? User inputs first, I will start with 0. User inputs first character minus user inputs next character. If that's negative. So what does this mean? 1, 2, first character, second character, their subtraction gives negative, right? Then what do? You increment I by 2. So in this case, I was 0. And what did we look for? User input, the 0th character of the array is 1. And then want, first character is 2. And then we calculated it. Then the next instruction will be incrementing I by 2, which will make it 2. Then you're looking for user input 2, meaning 1, 0, 1, 2, this character. So you can make 3, 4, which will give you -1 again. So you can continue like that, 5, 6, 7, 8, and you can continue even doing the same thing over and over again until it gives you the result. And how many, what was the length that we were looking for? 16. So if we're going like that, 8 and another 8, this should give you 16. I'm copying this and just trying to solve the exercise with that input. It says go to serial. That was the end of it. That was like really similar. That was like really easy CrackMe exercises on Linux. We solved 5 of them. This video does not include assembly knowledge. We just focus on decompiling the code, reading the C code, changing variables, trying to find our way around Ghidra, trying to see the options in here. I'd like to mention a few more stuff. For instance, if you'd like to write comments, you can just right click and say comments and set. As you can see, in these different options, you can always set different comments in order for you to track it better. It will also show up in here. So if you also walk through the assembly code, it will make you, it will make it easier to read the code basically. There are, of course, window, let's see, function called graph. It will show the functions in a graph view exactly the same way that we done in IDA. I'm an IDA person, I love it more, but of course Ghidra is also a very cool tool. So there's another function called trees. I really like this one because it shows incoming calls and outgoing calls. So especially for instance in a very easy Windows CrackMe that you're using with message boxes, it will show you all these calls and how you can identify basically the incoming and outgoing calls. So right, that was the solution for these 5 really easy CrackMes, and hopefully you enjoyed this video. Drop a comment and whether I will continue solving a bit more harder CrackMes, because these are like extremely easy, but at least we try to understand how to use Ghidra, or in the previous 2 videos, IDA Pro and IDA Free version. Now we are more familiar with disassemblers. Um, in my previous videos, I also worked on different debuggers. Now we also know the decompilers and disassemblers, so I think we have more ideas around that. So the thing is that whether I can continue working on different Crackmes, different binaries to reverse engineer, and maybe a bit more harder scenarios for us to read more assembly code so that we can actually get more value out of this. This is one option, and like I mentioned in my previous videos, I'm trying to show everything that I learned, especially in the last few years in my reverse engineering journey, and I'm planning to create a few videos on heap exploitation, not heap spring. I will also create heap spring, but there will be a few videos coming in the next weeks for heap exploitation. Hope you enjoyed the videos. Please drop a comment. I read your comments even if I cannot answer all of them. Hopefully we are learning from each other. Thanks guys. Cheers.